paid for by the veterans, as I understand it. So those things, while they may be annoying, are not again, to Councilman Howlack's point, they are not general fund dollars, as I understand it. Is that not true?
That is correct. The Rochester Road intersection that intersects Big Beaver is part of the Downtown Development Authority, and that was constructed with captured taxes as a capital project. The brick pavers was a work that was performed in conjunction with the veterans to have a place for memorial services primarily, and we had donated the property, and they had a series of fundraisers to construct the brick pavers. The globe was actually their design.
Thank you.
Mr. Zerwagen, will you clarify when you mentioned captured taxes again for the DDA that they're captured from the businesses in those areas? They are not captured from residential taxes?
That's correct. There's a specific acreage involved in the Downtown Development Authority. There was a snapshot taken of the value at that time, and any increments that resulted as a result of increased values was captured excuse me, by the authority and used for capital projects.
Okay, thank you. Who wants to go next? Councilwoman McGinnis?
I just had a couple of points of clarification that I wanted to make. Someone in their comments referred to the government that just keeps getting bigger, and I know that this is probably just more of an ideological phrase that someone's using, but I did want to clarify in terms of our government, because I think sometimes this is what is frustrating. Everyone's entitled to have their own positions on issues and have their own ideologies, political ideologies, and that's their prerogative. But in terms of what we're dealing with here in our own local government, it isn't in fact getting bigger, it's getting smaller. And I just wanted to point that out, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe at this point we're down 150 employees. So that statement, while that person is free to make it, in our reality here, our government is in fact not getting bigger, it's getting quite smaller, and I believe that number is 150 employees that were down over the last several years. So I wanted to make sure that was clarified.
That's correct, and that number represents 30% of the entire full-time workforce compared to our high point of fiscal year 2005-06. We have reduced our payroll by $8 million from October 2009 through June 2011. That's on a federal form. That's also a public document that our finance department fills out every year.
I know we're down a finance director, but I think that was something that I could clarify pretty easily in terms of the fact that our government here in Troy is actually getting smaller, considerably smaller, not bigger. A second point, and I know we've brought this up pretty much every meeting since we passed the budget, but there was also another comment that there was a budget that was submitted by Councilman Howlack and Councilman Fleming, and I know that you guys are getting lumped together, and I just wanted to clarify that that was not in fact the case, that it was actually something proposed by Councilman Howlack, and it was not something that was brought together by the two of you. So unless that's not correct, I wanted to make sure that that was clarified, because for some reason that keeps coming forward, and I thought I had perfect attendance, so I wanted to make sure that I didn't miss something. So the other point that I wanted to discuss, and it was in reference to 401k contributions. I believe that someone in their public comment indicated a percentage that the city of Troy had for new hires at 8%, and that in their opinion that number was too high compared to the private sector. And I just wanted to clarify in terms of when we are asked to compare ourselves to other entities, that has to be a comparable entity that you're using. And to my knowledge, I didn't think that was done in terms of when you're bringing those to the table to the arbitrator, if we were in fact able to compare to private entities. And I just wanted some clarification on that. 2
points. One is that we've been fortunate in Troy not to have to go to arbitration, because our employees sit down with us, with management, and we essentially solve our problems in-house, if you will, without the benefit of a business agent, in particular with the police department patrol, the police department command, and the fire service staff officers. There were a couple of unions this year that did use a business agent, and we still were able to negotiate an agreement. But taking the big unions that we have, the police unions, if we were to go to arbitration, what would happen is that the arbitrator would ask the union for a list of what they thought would be comparables, and then the city would submit a list of what they thought would be comparables. and the comparables would be municipal entities that have a monopoly on legitimate violence, which is a police department. And there are no private sectors that have such a monopoly, and so therefore there are no comparables to a police department aside from other municipals or municipal units of government, perhaps the county government as well, through the sheriff's department, that have that same job description.
And in terms of what we know we can compare them to, we asked ICMA to review this, and of their 9,000 clients, it was my understanding that our employee wages and benefits were right dead set in the middle.
ICMA indicated that based upon their study, the salary and wages of Troy employees are comparable to other similar-sized cities. They also said that we are ahead of the curve compared to other cities in following best practices to reduce benefits for new hires.
And my last question, ongoing maintenance of the transit center. I know we're not at that point yet, but we have asked this question probably about 20 times, and I'm under the understanding that we've gotten a clear-cut answer on this, and I just wanted to reiterate that that is already something that we've discussed in terms of private people that would be coming in and leasing space and covering the costs of what those ongoing maintenance expenses were, and I just wanted to point that out again because it came up.
And it's in the report that's at the end of the agenda. It's in there. Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin, I'd like to call on the rest of you, but I need to take a break. Do the rest of you want to take a break, or you want to continue on?
Did you want a quick, do you have a quick?
Can I make a quick comment, because Councilwoman McGinnis referred to
Yes.
my vote on the budget.
Coming.
To make it perfectly clear, Councilman Howlick proposed a revised budget. I had reviewed that budget by email that he had sent me. I supported that budget in the meeting and voted for that. I seconded and voted for that budget. So to be perfectly clear, yes, I was aware. I did support that budget. So when people say the record's the record, you know, I supported it and I voted in favor of it. Also, in addition to that, just quickly, the mayor referred to the undesignated fund balance for 2013 and 14 being at 12.4%. That's based on what we know today. Fortunately, we've had some concessions by employees and other steps we've taken since the budget was approved. Those numbers have not been reflected yet. We don't know what it's going to be. We talked about this at the last meeting. There will be new budget numbers come out. We don't know what they're going to be, but I think there's going to be an improvement. Fortunately, because we've had some concessions that are not reflected, so we don't know how much undesignated, unreserved fund balance they're going to have in 2013 and 14. It could be certainly more than what we're anticipating, but we don't know.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
The other thing we don't know are the costs that are increasing as well. I know you would agree with that. Fuel and equipment prices continue to go up. So when someone can go through and add up a list of numbers and look at what you're saving, we all realize that we also have increasing costs. The cost for me to fill up my tank of gas has changed. Yet I can't argue with the gas pump and say, you know, I'm hurting here, gas pump. I need your fuel. Shouldn't you reduce your price? The cost of the fuel is the cost of the fuel. We have some costs that we just have. We've inherited them. Fuel, equipment, and so on. Those are things that we have to actually deal with. So it's not, gee, I love my gas. If I want to put it in my car, it has an expense because operating my car comes with that expense. The cost of operating my car also comes with insurance. I also have to rotate, in fact, I need new tires. That's going to be my anniversary gift. But these are operating costs. And like it or not, those are things that we can cut human beings as we have. 1/3 gone. But we have fixed costs and increasing costs that we're going to have to look at the same time.
We have those costs too.
I think some of the...
Sir, I spoke about that before.
Some of the frustration that's felt up here is dealing with the same misnomers time after time after time. And we know that some people did leave, but as was mentioned, quoted at the table was Councilmember Fleming and Councilmember Howlick submitted a budget. There was no submission. It was simply a second on the amendment. So I'm glad that's cleared up, but again, that person is gone and it comes up time after time after time, as do some of these other issues. Simply, because of the charter amendment, we cannot raise millages. It was asked that the people have that opportunity to vote. We are bringing this vote before the people on August 2nd. It will be their opportunity to vote yes, the library stays open with a sustained revenue for 5 years, or no, it will close August 5th. Everyone can look on the website and determine the amount that it will actually cost them. For me, the difference in my tax dollars this year and last year, when I vote yes, is going to be $4.80. That's my tax bill. For others, like the mayor who has already voted, her tax bill as a result of that vote compared to last year will still be a $13 savings for her. It varies. I encourage people to take advantage of the website. Are there any other comments from council? Councilmember Slater.
If anybody wants to speak to me personally about my comments, I'd be happy to speak to you. I think there was some inferences that you took from what I said, and I'd be happy to talk to anybody anytime about my comments personally. So I welcome you to stop by and talk to me so I can explain to you what I was referring to. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Slater. We'll take a 5-minute recess at this time, then we'll come back.
Thanks for your indulgence. We finished with the response? Okay. We have no postponed items. Regular business, we're going to reconsider on the mayoral appointments to the Local Development Authority. I made an error last week, and so we have to reconsider the one item and then fix it. So I apologize for that. Could we have, I'll move the reconsideration.
Support.
Moved by the chair, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin, that we reconsider the mayoral appointments to the Local Development Finance Authority. Discussion on the reconsideration? The vote, Mrs. Bittner?
Mayor Schilling?
Yes?
Councilmember Beltramini?
Yes?
Fleming?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
Yes.
Councilmember McGinnis?
Yes.
Slater?
Yes.
Motion passes. This time I hope to do it right. I move that the mayor of the city of Troy hereby appoints the following persons to serve on boards and committees. Local Development Finance Authority, appointed by the mayor, 5 regular and staggered 4-year term. Maureen Donahue Kraus, the Oakland County designee. John Zerleg, the city manager. Michael Kidder, reappointment, term expiring 6/30/2015. Nick Vitale, term expiring 6/30/2015. Robin Beltramini, term expires 6/30/2014.
Support.
Madam Mayor?
Moved by the chair, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin. Councilwoman Beltramini.
I do not think that the bylaws of the LDFA require the city manager to be sitting on that board. I think he sits on that as an informed Troy resident, actually.
The rules, I spoke to Mrs. Bittner about this because the original rules were passed and then they were updated and changed. I did not pull those all out again when making the appointments.
I mean, it does not matter except for the fact that he may have a term involved in this.
Okay. Mrs. Bittner?
My research showed that originally the rules for the LDFA did appoint the city manager. The rules were then somewhat loosened with an amendment, but it did not specify that the city manager has a term involved. It just said that the city manager would be appointed to that board.
Okay. That's fine.
Okay.
Because before the city manager has not consistently served on that board, which is why I say that.
Okay. All right. And any other discussion on this item? And I apologize for the error last week.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilman Howard?
Consistent with all of my votes on any appointment ever to this board, I'll be voting against the resolution. And the reason I vote against these is because from the inception, I believe that the concept of a smart zone in this city to capture tax monies that would otherwise go to the city's general fund, capital and operating and so on and so forth. And essentially it's being spent to, these days, to divert money into the Automation Alley, which is a nonprofit corporation. So I don't believe that as a wise use of tax dollars, and therefore I don't support its existence, and therefore I don't support the existence of the board, so I vote against appointments. The people, fine people, but I can't support this resolution.
Any further discussion of the motion? The vote, Mrs. Bittner?
Councilmember Beltramini?
Yes.
Fleming?
Yes.
Howard?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
Yes.
Councilmember McGinnis?
Yes.
Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Schilling?
Yes. Motion passes. The I-4 is the agreement to provide fleet maintenance services for the city of Madison Heights. Could we have a resolution moved by someone?
Madam Mayor?
Councilwoman Beltramini?
Resolved that the Troy City Council hereby approves the interlocal service agreement for the City of Troy to provide fleet maintenance services to the City of Madison Heights, and be it further resolved that the Troy City Council hereby authorizes the mayor and acting city clerk to execute the agreement, a copy of which shall be attached to the original minutes of this meeting.
Support.
Moved by Councilwoman Beltramini, seconded by Councilwoman McGinnis, that we approve the resolution as printed and read. Discussion? The vote, Mrs. Bittner?
Councilmember Fleming,
Yes.
Howlerwack,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin,
Yes.
Councilmember McGinnis,
Yes.
Slater,
Yes.
Mayor Schilling,
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini.
Yes.
Motion passes. I-5 is the ratification of the 2011-2013 contract and approval of early retirement incentive program for the Troy Communications Supervisors Association. I'll move the resolution as printed.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I would like to support it, but I think it's important to actually read this one.
Yes, moved by the chair, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin. And Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin, I'm going to ask you to read this one since I read the one last time.
Whereas a tentative agreement has been reached between the City of Troy and TCSA for the period July 1st, 2011 through June 30th, 2013. And whereas Michigan's continuing rising unemployment and reductions in the taxable value of real estate are adversely affecting the City of Troy's operating revenues. Whereas Michigan's continuing economic distress has led city management to project significant budget shortfalls for fiscal years 2011, 2012, 2013. Whereas economic uncertainty demands that the City of Troy government reduce operational expenses while improving efficiency and effectiveness. Whereas one recognized means of reducing operational expenses while simultaneously creating opportunities for reorganization and restructuring is to provide a voluntary separation incentive for city employees to retire. Whereas one Troy Communications Supervisors Association, TCSA, member will meet the eligibility criteria for retirement from city employment as of June 30th, 2011, and 3 Troy Communications Supervisors Associations, TCSA, members are within 5 years of meeting the eligibility criteria for retirement from city employment as of June 30th, 2011. And whereas the proposed early retirement incentive program has been reviewed and is recommended by city management as a mechanism to reduce workforce levels, create position vacancies, and provide city management with the opportunity to reduce costs, reorganize, and restructure operations, therefore be it resolved that Troy City Council hereby authorizes implementation of the following early retirement incentive program to be offered to the Troy Communications Supervisors Association, TCSA members who will be eligible to retire or are within 5 years of eligibility on or before June 30th, 2011, provided that the program is economically beneficial to the City of Troy. And be it further resolved that the early retirement incentive program may be offered during a minimum 45-day window of opportunity, with said incentive being the option of a lump sum payment of $1,000 for each full year of retirement service as of June 30th, 2011, or the conversion from a DC pension plan to a DB pension plan. And be it further resolved that funding for the early retirement cash incentive program shall be obtained from funds made available in the department's budgets, and funding for the early retirement DC to DB program shall be obtained from the funds contained in the members' DC accounts. And be it further resolved that employees in the defined benefit and defined contribution retirement plans desiring to participate in the early retirement incentive program must file written application to retire no less than 30 days in advance of the requested retirement date, which shall be no later than November 15th, 2011, with the employee's retirement system on the appropriate form. And be it further resolved that the lump sum early retirement incentive pay shall not be included in the final average compensation, FAC, for employees on the defined benefit plan. Contributions will be made to an employee's defined contribution plan or defined benefit plan by the City of Troy and the employee as a result of this lump sum payment. Be it finally resolved that Troy City Council hereby authorizes city management to negotiate participation in the early retirement incentive program with represented employees, retirement system members in collective bargaining proceedings, and be it finally resolved that a 2-year collective bargaining agreement between the City of Troy and TCSA for the period July 1st, 2011 through June 30th, 2013, as presented, is hereby ratified by the City Council of the City of Troy and the Mayor, and city clerk are authorized to execute the final agreement.
Support.
No, it's already been moved in second, but thank you. The discussion of the item? Vote, Mrs. Bittner?
Councilmember Howlerleck?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
Yes.
Councilmember McGinnis?
Yes.
Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Schilling?
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini?
Yes.
Fleming?
Yes.
Motion passes. I-6 is amendment of the consent judgment and preliminary site plan approval, file number SP186A, proposed Sunset Plaza CVS Pharmacy drive-through northeast corner of Long Lake and Livernois, 125 East Long Lake, Section 10, currently zoned Neighborhood Node M District, controlled by consent judgment.
Mayor.
Councilman Fleming?
Yes, I'll move that as printed.
Is that you? Uh-oh. Moved by Councilman Fleming, seconded by Councilwoman Beltramini, that we approve the resolution as printed. Discussion?
Madam Mayor,
Yes. Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
I have a question. Perhaps Mr. Sabadat might respond.
On the site plan or the...
Really, it has to do with the handicap accessible parking place and the safety concern about crossing over and so on. I wonder if you could address that issue and whether that's been resolved.
It was resolved. It was you probably read the planning consultant's memorandum where it was indicated that the preference was to locate the handicap spaces to the west of the building. The petitioner preferred to locate the spaces on the south side of the building. There was significant discussion at the Planning Commission meeting on June 14th. The petitioner indicated that there was significant cost in eliminating and doing some work regarding ramping and whatnot. And after much deliberation, much discussion, it was agreed that it made sense to have the handicap parking on the south side. There really was the consultant agreed at the meeting that locating the handicap spaces on the south side of the building was appropriate.
With that address, I'll support it.
It's been moved and seconded?
I mean, I will be voting yes.
Okay. Anybody else have questions while Mr. Sabadan is there? Thank you.
Thank you.
The vote, Mrs. Bittner?
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
Yes.
Councilmember McGinnis?
Yes.
Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Schilling?
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini?
Yes.
Fleming?
Yes.
Howlerleck?
Yes.
Motion passes. I-7 is the proposed amendment to Chapter 10, the Employees Retirement System of the Code of the City of Troy. Chapter 10.
Madam Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
Resolved that Troy City Council hereby approves an amendment to Chapter 10 of the Troy City Code Employee Retirement System, a copy of which shall be attached to the original meeting minutes of this meeting.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin, seconded by Councilman Slater, that we approve the resolution as printed and read. Discussion? Vote, Mrs. Bittner?
Councilmember McGinnis?
Yes.
Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Schilling?
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini?
Yes.
Fleming?
Yes.
Howlerleck?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
Yes.
Motion passes. Consent agenda. Does council have any items they wish to have exempted from this vote?
Mayor.
Councilman Fleming?
J4A.
J4A. Any others? Okay, could we have a resolution approving all the items except for J4A?
Mayor.
Councilman Fleming?
Resolved that the Troy City Council hereby approves all items on the consent agenda as presented with the exception of J4A, which shall be considered after consent agenda items as printed.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Fleming, seconded by Councilman McGinnis, that we approve the resolution that approves all the consent agenda items with this vote except for J4A that shall be considered after this vote. Discussion? The vote, Mrs. Bittner?
Councilmember Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Schilling?
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini?
Yes.
Fleming?
Yes.
Howlerleck?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
Yes.
Councilmember McGinnis?
Yes.
Motion passes. Councilman Fleming, you asked for J4A.
Yes, Mayor. In reading the detail on J4A, I was reading the cost to remove concrete and replace with topsoil and seed. And it's been brought to my attention that we're currently doing that in Troy in some subdivisions. And there's one in particular here that I noted at Timberview, just about a mile from here, where the existing sidewalk was moved to the curb, then a sidewalk all the way across a cul-de-sac was removed, and then the curb on the other side. And it's just replaced with topsoil and seed. Several people brought this to my attention, so on the way here tonight I drove by. And I'm just curious as to why and who makes a decision why we would remove a sidewalk and replace with topsoil and seed when it's, when I drove by there tonight, I noticed that foot traffic and bicycles are actually still driving across the whole cul-de-sac that's now, obviously with this weather, it's not going to grow any grass. But the sidewalk was taken out. So that's a question. Who makes that decision? Why would we be spending money to take out sidewalks and remove and putting in topsoil and seed?
We have a couple of different situations where we would remove sidewalk. One is a situation where you would have a sidewalk that would lead to a street and there's no sidewalk on the other side because the requirements for the Disabilities Act require to have a ramp on both sides that are safe. The scenario that you're speaking of is there's a small cul-de-sac there. When we do work on that sidewalk and have to do a repair, we have to put everything back into the handicap ramps, and the price of those are quite expensive. So we take a look at each individual location, make a decision in the field. I believe when you're speaking of, it's a small cul-de-sac. There's one house on either side of the cul-de-sac, and there's a detention pond in the center of it. So there's literally maybe 3 lots there, and the sidewalk already goes around that cul-de-sac. We're always looking to try to extend our dollars when we're talking about capital projects, and by not putting that 2 ramps and that sidewalk across their back, because we had to remove it because of the requirement, we were able to do another complete intersection and other work other places. So that was a field decision that would be made in those different instances.
Any other questions?
So the answer really is it's a field decision. Someone goes out and looks at that particular situation. So someone looked at this sidewalk and the 2 handicap ramps that are already there and the sidewalks that was already going across that cul-de-sac and decided it was beneficial to remove both handicap ramps and remove the sidewalk across that cul-de-sac and replace it with dirt and seed. And we're doing that around Troy.
We're doing that, but the way that you explained it, that there was handicap ramps there, the ramps that were there were not approved ramps. We had to remove them regardless. Then the decision was made whether it's beneficial to put that back in or continue to use dollars elsewhere in the subdivision, because we're talking literally, when you have a wedge-shaped property, there's 3 parcels on that, and people still have the accessibility to take and traverse around with very little extension. So it was a field decision? Yes. Partially that was decided so that we could extend more work throughout the subdivision to correct other areas.
Okay. Someone want to move this item then?
Madam Mayor?
Councilman Beltrame?
I live in one of those subdivisions where half a sidewalk was taken out at a corner, but I definitely understand. Therefore, resolved that this Troy City Council hereby awards a contract to complete the concrete pavement repair program fiscal year 2011-12 with an option to renew for 2 additional 1-year periods to the total low bidder, Delicio Contracting, Inc. of Clinton Township, Michigan, at unit prices contained in the bid tabulation open July 7, 2011, a copy of which shall be attached to the original minutes of this meeting based on the scope of work and the ability to add additional locations up to, but not exceeding, the amounts budgeted. And be it further resolved that the award is contingent upon the contractor's submission of properly executed bid and contract documents, including bonds, insurance certificates, and all other specified requirements.
Support. Moved by Councilman Beltramini, seconded by Councilman Slater, that we approve the resolution as printed and read. Discussion?
Here.
Further discussion? Yes. Councilman
I'll vote for
Fleming?
this. I'll vote for this with that explanation, but I'd still like to visit that site with you just to better understand it, so I've got so I can respond to the phone calls that I'm getting, and may continue to get. So, thank you.
Your Honor, Mr. Richnack will be happy to meet with Mr. Fleming as well as any resident that Mr. Fleming wishes to bring along.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
I think it might also be helpful for those who haven't been able to take the training or study it, our liability under the law. I think that's the important piece that's missing in here. The federal mandates regarding this, and again, we have 300 miles in Troy, but those mandates which determine what we must do, and when we touch a sidewalk, then it must be brought up to a certain code or adapted therefore. So perhaps that would be helpful for Councilmember Fleming or anyone else who hasn't been able to take some of those courses.
Right.
Thank you.
Those are the American Disabilities Act things are required. Just like people when they comment about the red bricks at Rochester and Rochester Road and Big Beaver, that was required to do when we changed the intersection.
Here.
Okay, yes, Councilman Fleming?
I am somewhat familiar. I'm not an expert on the ADA, but I think when we look at some of the situation, there may be some extenuating circumstances. I just want to better understand. So it's an education for me as well. So thank you.
The vote, Mrs. Bittner?
Mayor Schilling?
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini?
Yes.
Fleming?
Yes.
Howlerlack?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
Yes.
Councilmember McGinnis?
Yes.
Slater?
Yes.
Motion passes. Next, we go to council comments.
Madam Mayor?
Councilman Beltramini?
Before we move to council comments, I would like to move that we afford ourselves the ability to reconvene the closed session after.
Don't we have to suspend the rules first?
It's already on the agenda, we just skipped over it.
It's at the beginning.
Pardon?
Right after roll.
It was at the very beginning.
Pardon?
It was right after the roll. You just moved on to the next item on the agenda.
That item was, sorry, excuse me, that item was voted on in closed session? Before the closed session began, you voted to go into closed
Right.
session?
Afterwards, we voted to,
No, we didn't.
no,
We said
we did not.
we'd suspend the rules and continue. What we need to do is suspend the rules to continue it.
Yeah. Yeah, we need to continue.
Okay.
So whatever we need to do to do
All right.
that.
You moving to suspend the rules?
Sure.
Second.
Okay. Moved to, by Councilman Beltramini, seconded by Councilman Howlerlack, that we suspend the rules. Discussion on the suspension? The vote, Mrs. Bittner?
Councilmember Beltramini?
Yes.
Fleming?
Yes.
Howlerlack?
Yes.
Kerwin? Or Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin, excuse me.
Yes.
Councilmember McGinnis?
Yes.
Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Schilling?
Yes. You're
Madam-
moving to continue the closed session for the,
Yes, ma'am. I would move that we reconvene in closed session as,
permitted by the
right,
designation in the first resolution.
right.
Okay.
Because we simply recessed that
Do
meeting.
we need to repeat the numbers for closed session?
Yes.
You should, yes.
Okay. They are, where is it here?
MCL 15.268A.
Thank you.
We
Support.
shall reconvene in closed session as permitted.
Okay. Moved by Councilman Beltramini, seconded by Councilman Fleming. Discussion? The vote, Mrs. Bittner?
Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Howlerwack?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Kerwin?
Yes.
Councilmember McGinnis?
Yes.
Slater? Mayor Schilling?
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini?
Yes.
Motion passes. Now, council comments. I'm going to mention an item that is in the letters. I appreciate Kelly Services taking time to commend our police department and our Troy Police Department officers for the positive ways that they have impacted their employees and commending the police department. You all have a copy there, and it is in the agenda. And that is echoed by many of the businesses in Troy, as by residents. The other thing I'd like to do is to commend the fire department. They sent out a press release about the 2-alarm structure fire at the Sunnymead Apartments, and stations 3 and 4 and 1 responded, and that meant that 44 firefighters, along with 5 engines, 3 ladder trucks, and 1 air tender responded to this fire and were on the scene for over 3 hours, even in the hot and humid weather conditions. And there were no injuries, and all the pets were saved. The picture that went with the press release of the flames, it's really scary when you see that. But as we know, our fire department is the best and always are ready to respond. And if they need more than one station to respond, they do. And I think that they, from all of us, we certainly appreciate our fire department, and if the police department had to respond for anything for that too, I'm sure they were there because they work as a team. We're very fortunate in this community to have outstanding service by both our fire department and our police department, and especially in emergency situations, we can always feel confident that they know exactly what to do and do it precisely the way it should be. Thank you from all of us. Anybody else have council comments?
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
It's really public safety again, and I see that we do have someone that we can talk to about this, because we had the department report from the police department, and it did show kind of an increase in stolen vehicles, Chryslers particularly. But as the report, and this is available online, I hope people will look at some of these things, but the report points out that our regional approach to problem solving actually cracked that case. So, Captain.
Would you like Captain Sherling to respond?
Please.
Yeah, as is the case with most of these kind of crimes, they're regional and they're pattern crimes, and criminals generally go from one city to the next. And it's not only the auto theft, it's a home invasion. You see a little bit of an increase in narcotics enforcement. It's the same thing. It's these teams coming together, working together, sharing resources, and being able to take out criminals that don't just work in one city, they work throughout the region. That's an important resource because it reduces crime and increases safety, not only in Troy, but among the many areas that surround us as well. So it's good teamwork, and it's consistent with regionalization, sharing resources, cutting costs.
Thanks. And again, it shows the problem solving, and that's really part and key to the Troy Police Department, is really focusing on the problems and not looking at. Would you like to comment on that?
That's true. Most of the deployments that we try to make are based on responses to problems, both preventing problems before they occur, which is significant, as well as responding to problems as and after they occur. And effective problem solving in pattern crime that affects a region is groups of officers from different organizations being able to communicate and work together as a team to solve those problems. Because again, a lot of those pattern crimes are one or two groups of criminals, and in order to get into those kind of investigations, you need the technology, you need the resources, you need the surveillance, and when departments come together to do that, we see the outcomes that are reflected in that report.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Any other council comments at this time? Seeing none, then we're in recess, and we'll reconvene in the other room for the closed session.